It's been a long time, and the main reason I haven't been doing it is because the time I spend in front of my computer and the time I spend thinking about these kinds of things don't really intersect. Um, Most of the time I think about it is when I'm idle or walking around in the shower, in bed, etc., or outside, on transit, in a car, on the train, and the time I spend on my computer, I'm usually doing other stuff. So it does. That's the main reason I haven't been doing these. Today I want to talk about. Okay, so today I'm actually very uncomfortable about today's topic because I am aware that I am entirely ignorant about all of the premises about the real world that I'm talking about. So this doesn't really represent much of my beliefs about the state of the world. This is more of kind of an interpretation, right, of certain principles and ideas. Uh, okay, so I actually want to talk about the Matrix, and the Matrix, by principle, is can be taken in many different ways, and they would all, in my opinion, more or less be correct. And I'm not really talking about this kind of like conspiracy theory or the idea that we all live in a simulation. That's not what I'm trying to get at, or that's not the aspect I want to talk about. Even though it is a reasonable aspect of the movie, the philosophical question of what if we live in a simulation. Although on that topic, I would ask if hypothetically, right now, you in a sci-fi future or in a world of magic and monsters, with very powerful beings, and you were offered an opportunity, maybe there was like a god who wanted to filter out their participants, the potential applicants for a certain you know opportunity, and in order to decide, he wanted to do a character test for suitability. And the test was you live an imaginary life without your memories, and then he looks at the decisions you make, and this is your life today. It's like, would anything change? No, nothing would change. I think there is no dilemma to be had if we were to live in a simulation. Because nothing changes. Okay. Anyways, so on the topic of the Matrix, the basic principles are I watched the movie so long ago, but basically the basic premise is the setting of the movie is that you live in this kind of illusory world of mundanity, basically, and repetition, and the world as you see it, and that in reality the AIs have taken over the world and are harvesting the humans, right? And you're offered two choices: the red pill or the blue pill. The red pill, you know about the truth, and you take on the mission to fight it forever. And the blue pill is you forget about everything and return to your original life. There's a few other aspects that I remember, like the lady in the red dress, which is like the distractions that keep you, I guess, attached. I don't really know the theme of that one. And then there's the theme that of the agents, which is everything tries to stop you from breaking out. Now, I don't really want to talk about this kind of the battle itself, the battle against the truth, or whatever. So here are the aspects I want to focus on. So first of all, it is our limited perspective, how little we truly know of the world. We live in. So first of all, there's a few different forms of the Matrix, right? You can look at. Some people like to talk about the Matrix in the form of society, where there's like this extra layer of society that you don't know about, which is probably true, but it's not like it's conspiracy. It's just we're not made to live in such massive societies. There's just too much. The connections become too complicated and interwoven that it's simply too much work to study. Like even just if you think about like laws and finances, like nowadays you need lawyers just to know all the rules of society, and you need accountants to help you handle all the complicated taxes and shit, if you were to run a small company, hypothetically. But it's just too complicated. But so anyways, back to the original topic, which is we know so little about the world. Like we are basically all frogs living in the bottom of a well. And that's not to say in a bad way, but what I mean is, not only so, but we believe that limited sphere is either all there is to it, or almost all there is to the world, right? So we don't consider, generally speaking, like while blue pilled, and I will talk about that later too, we don't really consider the alternatives that much. We stay within our lane for the most part, and for good reason, by the way. I don't want this to be derogatory either, but even though the movie portrays red pill as good and blue pill as evil, kind of, not exactly, but I don't, that's not the form that I'm trying to explain. Anyways, so where was I? Okay, I keep getting distracted and sidetracked, but basically we have the forms of the matrix, right? So I was originally saying that there's the societal form, which is not what I'm talking about, where there's extra layers to society that we don't know about, and then there's and then I ended up talking about how little we know of the world, which is also true, by the way, which I think is good, which is how it should be, as long as we know that's the case. Like, I mean, I think that's like how the Dunning-Kruger effects work, right? It's like you have the things you know a lot about, and the things you don't care as much about, you're okay with not knowing that much about. That's why you're happy with knowing that little, and I think that's where the Dunning-Kruger effect kicks in. But anyways, so the one I actually want to talk about is the matrix of your mind, in the sense that we have this layer of perspective. Essentially, the matrix that I'm talking about is your perspective, and escaping the perspective is, well, partially impossible, but also, like, yeah, we can think more objectively, but you're still limited by how little of the world you know. And yeah, I'm not saying like everybody, some people can go around traveling everywhere, whatever, and studying everything, but that's not my point, right? So we are very limited by our perspectives on not just our experiences, but also even if we include the things we read, the things we hear of, the things we know, we are so deeply integrated into our perspective that, like they say, I don't know who says it, but like they say, we look through the world through like rose tinted glasses. Not literally rose tinted, but like tinted glasses. That is our perspective, right? Like everything is filtered in. Like someone can say something and you can understand it completely differently from what they said because of the way you focus on it, because you are the one interpreting it. It goes through your way of thinking, and that's why misunderstandings happen so much, because language isn't precise enough to get past the barriers in perspectives. And here I have a note here about that I wanted to mention. Actually, I have a lot of notes on perspective. Okay, so the story of the elephant and the blind people is so incredibly generic, but I'm going to use it as an example here. Like it is a great description of perspective, right? And the way I'm talking about it here is the elephant is reality as a whole, and we are all blind. Like no matter how objective we want to be, we can only touch so much of the elephant. And we are not always going to be able to understand someone else's description of what the elephant is. That's basically what I'm saying. It's such a good little... It's not exactly a story, but I don't know what to call it. Anyway, so you have similar things with... And by the way, like first impressions, I think like judging by first impressions is both normal. It's also built into humans for survival benefit and makes so much sense, right? It's like if you judge something on your first impression, then you can there's just so much in life to judge, right? You know, not because it's not worth spending that much mental energy on everything. So we have to be selective about what we think critically about, because critical thinking is such a high energy task. So that's why discrimination happens, right? Because you go to the method, the characteristic of closest proximity when judging an event or group of people or whatever. Like when people, you find the difference between you and them, and maybe the easiest similarity between the first few people who committed this thing, and then you judge that group of people as a personal stereotype. Also, in terms of, on the topic of perspective, when you have media, it changes things even more, especially like when they talk about how like people's perceived danger of society, even in areas that are with much lower crime rates than before, have gone up because the news just pulls from a wider range. So that's why you have racism, sexism, tribalism, etc. Because, you know, you see if you're a woman and you see three men do this bad thing, it's easy to just say, okay, so this is a thing that men do, or that I should be careful of men. And then if you have, you know, if you're a white man and you see three Asian men do some bad thing, it's easy to just say Asian men do it. And it's not, obviously not a good thing. Perhaps this is one of the things you should be critical about, selectively critical about. But it's the easiest safety mechanism that humans built, because back then, when you lived in small tribes, if you have another tribe, a few people from another tribe, which had slight distinct characteristics that they were set in that group, then you just go, okay, this tribe doesn't seem to be on friendly terms with us, and so on. Anyways. Critical thinking is about humility. We can't truly convey our understanding through words, because the listener will understand it through vivid imagination and filling in the blanks subconsciously. That's just a note I had. I'm not really going to expound on that because I kind of mentioned it already. Yes. So furthermore, on the topic of judging things based on our perspective, we consider what we do as the standard. We consider ourselves as the average, and we consider people who in whatever aspect that this is in the context of, consider people that are more to be impressive or too much, and people who are less to be too little. For example, if you are listening to some people talk about math, people who, or not math, let's say science, it's like people who understand it better, who know more, are smart in the subject, and people who know less than you are dumb or the like. And you judge yourself, what you can do, as normal, even regardless of where you place. And then, yeah. But anyways, that can be for like any subject, any area. If you something you're good at, what you do as a profession, that's your standard. You look at someone who do it poorly, you make what you see are the mistakes that you know are mistakes. Now maybe if you understand, if you're a reasonable person and you see a noob do it, you'll be understanding and be like, oh yeah, that's obviously, you'll be understanding towards their inexperience. But if you see a professional make a mistake, you'll probably be very disdainful, perhaps even angry. And if you see someone who is better, you'll consider that person impressive, or in some cases they're doing too much or trying too hard, or you show them respect. Obviously this varies based on situation, by person, whatever, but those are the standards. But you have this wide range of professionals, and there is no this is a good standard. It's wherever you are above you is a good standard. Okay. Okay, so connecting over a similarity can now be used ideologically. Okay, so I'm gonna skip that for now. We'll talk about this maybe next time. I don't know. All right. So back to the Matrix. So what is okay? So obviously the Matrix can be interpreted many different ways. Here's the one I'm gonna talk about. The Matrix is what we see through System 1 thinking, our primal laziness, our inclination to solve the problems required for survival, and that's it. Just going through the motions, going through indoctrination, the things we already believe, that we're used to believing, our instinctual reactions to things. That's essentially what indoctrination is, for better or for worse, even though indoctrination is used for very deliberate and negative meaning. But what I just mean is what you are, what has been taught, what you have learned and absorbed over your life. The world of mundanity, the world of essentially not needing to think, the world of routine and habit, what you do on autopilot. And the real world, quote unquote, that the red pill talks about is going to be what I interpret as the world you see hints of when you engage in critical thinking, but is intimidating and full of despair or hard work, of facing difficult truths and the challenges involved. So, you see. So in the movie, you see that there's something else deeper to the world, and then the red pill is to take that as a challenge and fight against it, to go through endless challenges to overcome it, make it to the other side, to fight the enemy. I'll give you a simple example. Let's say, hypothetically, you just habitually eat snacks all the time. Maybe it was a habit that you built up when your parents were fighting or something, and you just eat snacks, and you've just over time grown very fat. And one day you look in the mirror and go, damn, I'm fat. And you're like, and you go, okay. And then the critical thinking may kick in, hypothetically, and goes, this is really unhealthy, unsustainable, and not good for me. All right. And the red pill in this analogy example is to go, well, this truth that I'm faced with is very difficult. I don't like this truth. I'm not comfortable with the world, the truth that I found myself in. And in order to overcome this, I would have to work hard, control my eating, build muscle or whatever, lose weight, and then I'll be healthier. And that's the quote unquote red pill. And the blue pill is to forget about it, right? Forget about it and go back to my habits. This basic example, right? Here's another example. Let's say you go, okay, the things when I am faced with this situation every time, X situation, I get angry. And I don't like that I get angry. I don't like the fact that I have so little control over my reactions and my temper. And then you have to face, okay, well, maybe I should change that. But changing it isn't easy. I'd have to both figure out why I get angry, and every time something similar to it happens, I'd have to notice that I'm getting angry and realize that it's not worth it, and I'd have to actively do it. I'd have to actively control myself and not get angry, which is very difficult. This is very difficult to not get angry by something you're instinctually enraged by. Now, some things probably should make you angry, and if someone slaps you in the face, you should be angry. But if one day you have a moment and you go, this thing that always makes me angry isn't something that is worth making me angry over, and you can, and in this case, the blue pill is to just forget about that thought and pretend it never happened. Anyway, so here, that's the aspect of the matrix that I'm talking about here, in terms of what the quote unquote matrix versus reality is, what the blue pill and red pill represent, which is the blue pill represents habit, what you were used to before, what you do when you're mindless, and the red pill represents the challenges of hard truths and change. It's like the red pill is essentially to believe that the strength of the mind is stronger than the instincts of the body, right? That's to take control of the body using the mind. And the mind is not the brain, it is the conscious thought, active conscious thought. It's the very small part of your brain. Not small. Not small is the wrong word. The very inactive, relatively speaking, part of your brain that is high in energy consumption and very detached. It likes to judge things all the time and very often does not judge yourself. All the time. This is the part of the brain that you have these internet warriors that max out on hypocrisy, always judging other people for doing things that they do because it's very outward facing. It doesn't judge ourselves when it comes to that most of the time because it's easier. It is easy to judge what is wrong with him, her, the world without going, wait, I do those things, I contribute to those things, because it allows us to stand on a moral ground that excludes us from the responsibilities. It's the source of victimhood, which believes that everything that is wrong with our lives is because of others, because it is a defensive mechanism and makes life, well, I mean, it's why you would take the blue pill. It is easier for the same benefits as the blue pill because you don't have to face the challenges of change. Not just the challenges of change, because willpower alone doesn't get you that far. I don't know how to describe it. It's like, I know all of these things sound bad. Like, the examples I'm using sound terrible, but I'm not saying people should just turn themselves into these like unfeeling robots that have one full control of their executive functions. Even though that sounds great, I don't think it's realistic or practical in many senses, because you have it's unrealistic expectations, and then you just end up with self-loathing when you fail to live up to the impossible, among other things. That's just an example of why. But I know these things sound terrible, but that's not what I'm getting at. Okay, I'm gonna change the topic a little bit. But, back on the original example, if this was a simulation, like if your life was a simulation to test your character, your willpower, your ambition, your drive, and your goals, and, after then the God goes, okay, God, not the God in any religion, but like the big powerful being that gave you this test in the other life, right? It's like if you imagine right now that, or not right now, but like if you imagine in this on Earth we had such advanced technology that you could go into like a VR game of simulated with a simulated life, and then there's like developers, and you're being recruited into a powerful secret organization, and they're judging what you do in the simulated life, right? It's like, and then you put yourself in that and go, what if this is that life, right? It's like, it's the same thing. That's what I mean when I say God, right? It's just the example of the whoever is giving the test. It's like, what if this life was that, right? It's like the red pill, blah blah blah. But that's not actually. I don't think everyone should take the quote unquote red pill that the movie represents, but it's, if we take a step back, simplify it a little bit, look at it in terms of critical thinking, select the aspects by which is reasonable for you, and so on. I'm not really getting at what should you change, what should you do, none of that. I'm just talking about my interpretation of the characteristics of the Matrix, or one of them. I'm not saying this is what I believe the Matrix is getting at. That's not even what I'm getting at. I'm just saying this is very difficult, right? It's like I feel like I keep getting off topic trying to explain myself, but this isn't even what I think the Matrix is trying to say, but this is just the topic I'm trying to talk about, using the Matrix as an example of and the things that the Matrix represents in the movie. It's kind of analogous, right? Okay. These are the things I think about, and then like the movie gets brought up, and I think more about it in the context of the movie elements. Okay. So the eval bar. I want to talk a bit about the eval bar and why PvP is a zero-sum game. Negative-sum game. And that doesn't mean we shouldn't play it. Okay, so actually, maybe this is the wrong time to talk about it. Hold on. Okay, maybe next time. Hold on. Let me see what else I have on. I think I have some other notes on the Matrix. Okay. Yes. Okay. So why the blue pill is sometimes better. Right. Let's talk about that a bit. Right now, let's have, what is the bliss of ignorance and why is it worth it? Okay, so on the topic of the frog in the well, right? We know so little of reality. We know so little about what's going on somewhere else in the world because we can only experience life in a very small sphere. We only have so much time. We only have so much energy. And it doesn't make sense for us to try to know everything. So, bliss of ignorance. Let's say people who never knew of electricity, people who never knew of running water, people who lived in tribes or live in tribes today. We, for the most part, most people wouldn't be able to live like that today because we are used to it. But that doesn't mean they were less happy than we are today. We face new challenges, mostly social or economical, that directly affect our quality of life in this, in terms of how we experience life, what we experience. Life is a mental journey, and quality of life isn't just about what we have access to, but the environment in which we have access to these things. So, for example, someone who is living in a tribe today may, on average, even be happier than the average person living in a city, even without access to those things, because they're not stressed about some of the things that these people are. And so if we took one of those people, had them live in a city for a while, and then go back, they may not be so happy now. So that would be why you have this concept of the blue pill, which isn't just you go back to your life before, but that you forget about it. And what I'm saying isn't that you have these people and we shouldn't expose them to technology. Whether or not we should is a different question altogether. But like, that's why curiosity, while is a driving factor, isn't always better for us to know more things, because we can have paranoia. Like, for example, let's say when you the topic of choice, right? When you go in and you have one jam or 3 jam flavors, you know which one you want, you take it and you go home. But when there's 27, maybe you don't know which one you want anymore. Maybe you won't be as happy with the one you have anymore. And so you have all this perceived freedom, and this extra freedom doesn't always improve our quality of life. All the extra choice isn't always better. So that's why knowing the truth, or knowing the vastness of the world, or knowing all the things you don't have access to, isn't always better for you, isn't always better for happiness. That's why you have these people talk. Now, again, this is the reason I was so uncomfortable. This is one of the reasons I was uncomfortable talking about it. When I say these things, this is like things I hear. I don't know that it's 100% true. I don't know that this premise is true. But assuming this premise is true, then okay, so when I say premise, it's after that's why you have these, and what is after these is things that I'm not actually sure is true. So that's why I didn't really want to talk about these things. But that's why you have these people who feel terrible from seeing all these fake, happy, rich lives on social media, all these filtered lives on social media. Now, I don't really look at these things, but I assume that's true because it sounds realistic. That sounds like what is reasonable to happen to me. So when you're exposed to all of these things, it affects your perception, because your local proximity of perception is now more online than geographical, which means when you see all of these people, when you only see people on social media, quote unquote, only see, it feels like everybody around you, right? It used to be the person next door to you, the person in your neighborhood, the people around you, the people in your tribe. That used to be your proximity. Now your proximity is what you see on social media, because that's what you see more of. That similar to my news example before. When you see everybody having quote unquote happy lives, it makes you feel like you're falling behind, right? So, and that's like why you go and take the blue pill, quote, in the movie, like the hypothetical blue pill. Not that exists and you can just forget about everything, but like that's the hypothetical benefit of the blue pill, or to not know. Sometimes it's better to not know about things. And then now another topic I want to talk about in terms of these relative life conditions is technology doesn't automatically improve quality of life. Technology is great. Advancements is amazing. Like running water is incredible. But when everybody around you has it, again, back to everybody around you, but like when everybody around you has it, it becomes a basic assumption and no longer a luxury, which means it no longer raises your quality of life and becomes boilerplate. It becomes an assumption. And what I'm getting at with this is power creep, right? So in terms like the hypothetical utopia where world hunger is done, even if global warming is gone, none of that will actually if everybody could get food for free and stay full, have water, and then none of that would mean that the world would be happy, that the people would be happy. Now, I'm not saying those things shouldn't happen. That would be an amazing advancement in technology. But the most important thing that would actually affect people's happiness is socioeconomic dynamics, right? Like, for example, like things like corruption, things like monopoly, the profit-seeking monopoly in particular. For example, right? If you talked about access to medical care and technology, then compared to before, it's incredible. But based on what I've heard, again, in the US, for example, it's so overpriced that because of the monopolies, that it doesn't even matter that the technology exists. The people don't have proper, reasonable access to it. Instead, they're just permanently in debt, which is basically glorified slavery in theory. Now, I'm not saying that's the case, but that the price cost of quote unquote U.S. healthcare is just an example for what I mean when I'm talking about how technology doesn't automatically increase quality of life. It is the accessibility of it, and not just. And there's going to be things that are difficult to obtain. Obviously, I don't believe in everyone having equal access to everything, but like obviously as technology advances, there's going to be a subset of things that become equally accessible, and then there's going to be premium access. And I'm not saying that technological advances are bad, but when you have these kinds of premium access, depending on how it's controlled and gated, the monopoly is obviously very dangerous, because you'll have people living in these cubicles eating like powdered food, powdered rations every day, not having access to anything, feeling inferior all the time, not having the equivalent of what today is like electricity or smartphones or whatever, and essentially being second-class citizens if it was similar to U.S. healthcare. The big hypothetical question, right? Okay. So that's on the topic of ignorance, right? Okay, so the connection with ignorance is, hypothetically, someone in that situation in hundreds of years from now who is miserable could look at our life today and go, they couldn't handle this, they couldn't live with this, the same way we can't look at someone living in a place without running water and toilets and electricity, and we wouldn't be able to live with that. But even though they're happier than us, we couldn't live that way. The same way our current lives would be looked at by someone much more miserable than us hundreds of years in the future. That's what I wanted to get at, right? So again, our ignorance to what they have is what allows us to be happier than them despite having less, because we didn't have those things that are preventing them from being able to live in our time. And another example is, let's say you want to know certain things about someone or something, and then if in the situation where you find out the truth, you can't handle not knowing the truth, so you seek it and you press for it, and when you find out the truth, you can't handle it, you feel terrible, you go into depression or a drinking fit or whatever, and then it's terrible, or like you don't know what to do. Like, think of the situations where in the movies where the world is ending and they hide it from the populace because the populace wouldn't be able to change anything, they can't escape from the calamity, so they have to solve the problem without really telling everyone. And in the situation that the populace knows that there's a secret, and then it seeks to uncover this conspiracy, similar to the conspiracy theories today. They seek to uncover it, and then when they find out, is it beneficial for anyone? No. So like the truth isn't always for you to know, right? It's like there's only so much we can know, and there's only so much that is actually beneficial if we knew. Right, so it's like the red pill isn't always good, right? And also it's like I think we'll always, for almost everyone, will always be quote unquote frogs in a well, because we can only experience so much of life, and we should not be completely ruined by the fact that there's so much of life we won't know about, because it's better to focus on the things that are important to us now And maybe we can look for some new things, but we should be willing to accept ignorance in certain aspects in general, right? We don't have to satisfy every curiosity. Not that we shouldn't seek curiosity. Curiosity is what drives human development. It's why we have technology. But two things, right? It's like understanding that we don't need to know everything, don't need to jump and grasp the vast skies in our hand, but also not be so arrogant and think that this is everything there is to the world. Understand that there's more. Understand that there's a lot we don't know. While, so it's like a balance, right? It's like there are things that we could know but isn't worth knowing, and then there's things that we should know we don't know, and we should seek to improve our understanding. It's two-sided, as everything is. I don't know what I'm getting at. I don't know that there's a moral to the story. It's just I'm not trying to present a major problem with humans or the world. It's just a concept, I guess, an idea. My understanding of the concepts that the Matrix, some of the concepts that the Matrix represents. It's not that I was thinking about the Matrix. I was thinking about some of these characteristics, and I thought that the Matrix was it was just a thought that, these are kind of elements that the Matrix presents, and then I thought about the other elements in the Matrix to present it in this form, rather than me trying to break down the Matrix, the movie itself. The authors could have been after. Maybe this isn't at all what the writers had in mind, which is completely fine, completely reasonable. Not what I was trying to represent. I was not trying to represent what the writers had in mind. I don't have a moral of the story. I don't have this people should behave a certain way. I don't have that either. I don't think everyone should take the blue pill. I don't think everyone should take the red pill. I don't even think, and also the pills are purely symbolic, right? It's like, so I don't want this to be taken as an opinion of mine. I don't even have one on the topic. These are just some thoughts and ideas.